Welcome back! Alright, this has been a series of short videos where I've been exploring modern scoring strings from Audio Bro. And what we're doing here is exploring some of the legato transitions. We're kind of getting a little bit further into the weeds than we usually do on this channel to explore transition volume, legato speed, transition speed, and we've even gone in under the hood and changed some of the sample start settings. A lot of this conversation has been in participating in a VI control, which is an online forum discussion community. And so let's dive right in. What I've done is if we look at the mixer here, I've got the mix up on the modern. I'll just turn these down so they're not distracting. So we just listened to the mix volume, the mixed cellos, which is a combination of closed stage and surround mics for Cellos B. And what I did for those was we went under the hood and we added a constant modulation for inverting the sample start, meaning start all the way at the beginning of the sample. And as I play a legato transition, you'll see the sample groups change color here. I can select by MIDI. I don't know why actually those harmonics and ostinatos show up, but what you can do to see it more clearly is move to your browser and change to expert mode. Usually you'll be in your libraries tab or maybe your database, but in expert mode you can actually see little speakers when when samples are sounding. So right there. And you can type in, use the filter here with the magnifying glass and look for a word like, in this sample library, the word legato. And what you'll see is this group here, the full mic, that's the mixed mics. For legato, for Cellos B, is what group gets activated when I play not one pitch, but two pitches overlapping. The close is also getting activated because I've got that on as well, but we're not hearing it because I've got that mic turned down. So, that helps you get your bearings. I'm using a keyboard that might make this sort of clicky sound through the mic, so if that gets too clicky, I'll turn the mic off. And what we're listening for is this transition volume sound. This is the actual sample sound, again on the mixed mic, all the way, or 6 decibels higher. It can go as many as 6 decibels louder than you just heard it. I think we'd all agree that's too loud, and there also, to me, it sounds like there's a little bit of overlap, meaning you hear the sustained sound, and then on top of that you start hearing a legato sound, and you want it to be more of a smoother transition, I believe so. This experience has been teaching me a little bit more about what sample library developers go through and what certain listeners and players and instrument users hear and what they're listening for, which will help me further in when I'm doing product reviews in the future, and also help me learn to be probably a better virtual orchestrator, composer type of thing. So that's one of the reasons that I'm trying this stuff out. Comments welcome in the YouTube video, and if you want to participate in the VI control forum. Now let's listen to that back at volume, back at neutral. I've got all the transition speeds. This is kind of a main transition speed controller. And it's unclear exactly in the manual how it interacts or affects the legato speed of this knob. But there's two transition. There's a transition speed, which I guess. Oh, that's right. It affects all port and gliss and legato. I've got port and gliss down, even though I shouldn't be activating them because this drop down here is set to slider, and legato is the only thing activated. I'm not changing over to ports or glisses yet. We're just looking at the legato transitions So the legato speed and the transition speeds are all as fast as they can go. A note about auto. What auto is doing is listening to how fast you're playing notes one after the other. So it doesn't do much after the first note, but once you play the second, third, and fourth notes, depending on how far apart they were in time, it will change correspondingly. Let's listen. So it starts in the middle, and it never goes above middle. It never goes slower than, what, noon o'clock, right? Noon up here. And if I play slowly, it doesn't change. But if I start playing quicker, it starts going fast. It starts moving towards the faster. And what we're doing here is turning that off and keeping it as fast as it goes, even if I play a slow transition, because in the mix mic, we've moved the sample starts all the way to play the entire sample of the legato transition. I'm not quite sure what this experiment is proving beyond that yet. Either that or I haven't had enough coffee. Coffee. To my ear, that sounds like the transition volume is too loud. Maybe others like that sound, and that's what they're listening for. There is, maybe they're looking for the sound of a simulated increase in bow pressure prior to the transition. As the player is playing a note and moving into the next note, they may apply more pressure or something, or kind of, there's a preparatory stroke that happens on the instrument as you're intending to move to a new note, and that it might be what they're trying to hear. I feel like it sounds a little loud for my sensibilities, but this is all about exploring how we all perceive things and how we all are listening to these particular recording samples. Let's play some thirds. Let's take it down maybe a whole decibel. Again, to my ear, that sounds too loud. And let me talk about the mod wheel, where we're at in terms of the dynamic layers. Without doing legato, I'm going to just play a C here. And that's a crossfade into the lowest dynamic layer. So I believe we're going to hear 4 dynamic layer transitions. So the reason I had the mod wheel where it was simply to kind of isolate this dynamic layer that I was hearing. There's a crossfade about there. There's a crossfade somewhere in here. So I'm picking this, maybe 10 o'clock kind of area because it feels like it isolates one of the dynamic layers for me so that we're not confusing dynamic layer overlaps with legato and sustain overlaps. Now some of these sound better than others, and see if it's determined by velocity at all. Playing very lightly. No, I don't think the velocity is really playing into it. This is playing very hard. And it does seem like there's some volume changes, so some of these legato transitions are louder than others, if I'm not mistaken. It's not responding to my velocity in the sense that I can press harder and hear it quieter. I can press quieter and hear it louder. I think depending on which transition is being played, not based on my velocity. So I think that just playing at whatever velocity is going to just trigger the transitions however they are coming out. So those last two, one was quieter and one was louder. So I don't know that they are consistent in volume, is what I'm hearing. Not a bad thing, actually. I mean, I'm not trying to be critical. I'm trying to just explain what I'm hearing. So again, that still sounds a little too loud to me. I'll take it down another decibel. In general, some of them are quieter than others, but... No, that's probably doable. Let's see if we can play a little melody. Wasn't trying to play E.T., but kind of got close there. Coffee. And we'll go down another decibel just because maybe some people want it masked more. We'll talk about that in a minute. Maybe we'll leave it there for a minute. It's -3. Maybe we'll bring it up a little bit so people can really hear the transitions. I'll go back to maybe 2.3 and choose a different dynamic layer. I've got this up so loud so that YouTube and whatever, all of the levels are relatively, you know, not super quiet. There's going to be some MP3 compression. You just want to use all the bits I can without going over. Looks like I do have a limiter on the master, so shouldn't hear any clipping, but we'll just, maybe we'll take it down a touch. Here we go. Also want to balance the voice with the instrument, all those considerations, so. Excuse me. So this is the louder dynamic level again. Trying to make sure I find one that's not crossfaded. And just so that we can compare, I know some people want to hear the close mics, and we'll move to that. But just to compare, oh, that's why it's panned so far. My fault. The Cellos A have not had this trick applied that we looked at before. What's called the PIXELPOET trick. Oh, it's still loading samples. I've got it on a spinning drive over there, so might take a second to continue loading samples. Plus my RAM is full with all these other... Well, maybe not. I disabled that. So the trick has not been applied here. Go back to B now that we're centered. Sorry about the panning earlier. I still think those are too loud. So let's apply the trick to the close mics. I'll stick with Cellos B, and we'll open this up, and we'll open our browser up, and we'll select these close mics for Cellos B. Change that group. Let me make sure that I've got only that group selected. Yeah. Okay. Change that group to sampler. So there's 42,000 samples here. That'll take a little while to load. And while that's happening, I'll bring in some other instruments here. Oh, I guess I can't. I thought I could. Let's bring up a new instance of play. We'll play Hollywood Orchestra, Hollywood, East West Hollywood strings. Celli Legato Slur, not the port, down to Niente. So hopefully it's loading that. This is also coming from a spinning disk, so it may take a little while itself. Guess we could keep pushing the system while that's happening. I don't actually see any movement down there. Let's bring up contact. Type in bro to the search field. Let's unload that portamento. And we've got Hollywood loaded. I'll move to the close mic right away. Oh, that's going to load them again. Forget it. Note the legato button is not on. That's intentional because if I turn legato on, it's a simulated legato. I've loaded a legato patch, so it's playing legato even though the legato button is not on. So both of those packages are, I don't know, maybe 10 years old by now. But they... But they, They have sort of no-nonsense legato transitions that are not overly audible, overly distracting in either way. They're not. They don't. There isn't a disappearing effect between notes where there's no sound. There's also no really overt like listen to me. I'm the legato sound. And we'll choose CSS. Maybe not classic legato. Let's go to here's standard legato, and we'll move to the close mic since it's easy. Excuse me, if you prefer the advanced. Looks like our modern scoring strings have now been loaded, so let's turn all these others off. Now the cellos back in contact here have been reloaded in the sampler format from direct from disk, DFD, and we're going to add a mod here, which is the constant of, oops, I just said release counter, constant of the sample start, and drag this slide over there. That is the trick. That's it. We did it. So you select your groups. I'm just doing the B close mics for cellos right now. The legato transitions only. I typed in the word legato up here in the search field. I'm using the expert mode when you show the browser. And I added a mod in the group editor of constant sample start inverted with the slider all the way to the right. Oh, now in the screenshot that I saw online, the lag was 0. I don't know that this is going to change anything, so I'm going to make that 0 again, just in case it changes anything. I believe that has to do with how it smooths incoming input if you were to move a controller very quickly. I don't have this set to a controller, so I'm not moving a controller, so lag shouldn't be affecting anything as I understand, but I'll set it to 0 anyway, so there's 0 lag. I guess there's something in the script that might have been using that, but I doubt it. And then we're done. So that was the PIXELPOET trick. Some of you might notice that an EQ is not bypassed here, but I assure you, the way the script looks, the EQ should be off, meaning we go over to the mixer. The way to enable the EQ is like that, and it's disabled. So it's available, but we're not sending any signal to it. The EQ, you get a lot of EQs. Here are some presets. So you choose you bring this up with the gear. You can see different EQ settings. They give you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. One of them is blank, I think. And then for every EQ that exists up here, you can resave it using these menu choices. So if I wanted to resave my close bright cello here, I wouldn't choose it. It would reset to the last time I saved it. So if I've made changes here, I would then choose save over. It would give me a name to give it. I can either choose the same name or a new name. And if I choose a new name, it will add a new one to the menu. And then here, it's hidden when, it's sort of hard to see when the insert has been enabled, but it's easy to see when the insert has not been enabled. There's a drop down here that lets you choose which EQ or which effect, which insert effect would you like to apply. So you can choose all of the contact internal effects, formants, ladder filters, or band rejects, band pass, high pass, low pass, foot flangers and choruses and reverbs and everything. So you can choose 1 or 2 3 band, 1 2 3 band EQs, solid EQ, and dynamics processors and everything. All right, so it is off. Now, let's see how it sounds. What we're going to do is move over to this. I'm going to keep the transition volume loud for a moment and just check it out. Sorry, I've been doing some changes while the video was paused. So those are the transition volumes with the PIXELPOET trick applied to Cellos B close mics, pan center, and the mod wheel in the velocity layer that we saw previously. Let's put it right about here. Now we were a little louder before because I had moved the mixer all the way up here. I don't know what exactly we were at. Put it at 6 for now. So that is the legato transition. With the PIXELPOET trick applied, transition volume as loud as it can go with the interface in the sort of mezzo, I would say mezzo piano, I guess, dynamic layer. And I think this is the experiment that we were going for. Turn the transition volume back to 0 decibels, meaning wherever the recorded sample goes. I've got the transition at norm. I've got the beginning of the samples. This is going to affect the beginning of the phrase. This is a recorded crescendo that moves into a sustain. This is a normal arco bowing technique that transitions into sustain. This is an accented start that transitions into sustain. All of these have release triggers on. Here's what it sounds like with release trigger on. And it off. If you want the envelope to end differently, you can change the release length here. We're not going to do that. We're going to keep this on. Lets the string ring out. And even in the close mic here, you can hear the room. If you wanted to mess with the start of the phrase, you can turn on the attack curve. Turn that off just for absolute clarity of what we're listening for. We're listening for the beginning of the note. I don't really hear a big difference. Maybe I'm blind, deaf. Maybe it's because the attack length needs to be changed. That's probably maybe they work together. Oh yeah, they probably have to work together. Okay, so our attack length is 500. Let's go exactly 500-ish. Okay, hold down Shift. So half a second, and then the attack curve is whatever negative 100 means. I'm not going to mess with those. They're all off, completely off. They're not going to change the legato in any way, shape, or form. They're not affecting the legato transitions. They're only affecting the way notes at the beginning of the phrase start. All of those are affecting the way notes at the beginning of the phrases start. And we're going to turn release triggers back on, or release tails, I think maybe. And back to our experiment. All right, we've investigated a bunch of controls. Yay. I slurp so that you know that I'm doing something. All right. Mic off, music start. All right, for my sensibilities, some of those work and some of them don't. You may have different opinions. Some of them just scream out, I'm the legato transition, I'm too loud. A couple of them actually work. They don't work on the faster passages. Usually there just sounds to be too much cluttery overlap happening. And again, these are all changing the default settings of the product. So if you're watching this and you're thinking that this is what you're getting when you buy it, you're not. I've changed the product. I've made changes. This is an experiment. So don't think that this is a review. These aren't my... This isn't trying to say the library is good or bad. I'm trying to explore what samples were recorded, and because they've allowed users to explore the engine, I've changed what they've done, and I'm affecting the scripting, not what you're buying. AudioBro has been very pleasant and open to suggestions, and they say some improvements are coming. So let's turn it down. And I've decided in the past, I did a little bit of experimenting off thread here, or off thread. You can tell I've been on the forum too much. I think this is what I posted to the forum, the VI Control forum. I believe these are the notes that I played. Let's see how it starts. Not too bad. I'd have to listen to it A and B with before and after myself, but I think it sounds pretty much like it should or could. What I don't understand, there's a couple things I don't understand about what we're doing here, and that is how we are we time stretching the legato transition samples by having the transition speeds down? Are we taking a sample that, maybe took, let's say, 1 second, and by taking this slider here down and maybe this slider here down, making that 750 milliseconds, so 3/4 of a second? In other words, are we affecting them in a processed way? So I'm going to keep this, I'll put it, I'll leave one variable static and change other variables. So let's change both legato speeds to the middle, just for fun. And what my wonder and thought, without looking at the script and trying to interpret that, is this going to play them back at the speed at which they were recorded, which may work better for some of the slower transitions and may work worse for some of the faster transitions. Let's hear. All right, and I'll bring them back down, and the variable will change this time. I noticed the MIDI had a lane that must have been moving my start. So the legato attack was moving over to crescendo. So let's remove that so that the legato attack is norm. There we go. Now that's mostly going to affect the way you perceive any phrase where the crescendo was still growing in intensity, but I started a legato transition. And I'll put this back at 0, primarily because I think it's back to, people wanting to hear the pure test, as it were. Right? Close mic. Cellos B, PixelPoet Trick applied. Legato. I'm not messing with rebos, so one of the things that we haven't been putting in here is rebos. That's not part of this pass of experiments. Release tails on. Transition volume at 0. Speeds as fast as they go in the interface. Auto off. Let's go. I sort of want to hear it with my EQ from Fabfilter applied. It'll brighten it up quite a bit. It's just for me. And I think that this is for me. I'm going to turn this down. I'll turn it down 1.5. I'll get a middle ground between 0 and what I tend to like. Maybe 1.2. This one's going to make it a lot brighter. I was trying to show there that even though I've got a dynamic EQ on those bands of 8 to 10 decibels of gain, the scale is down at 45%. So it's a pretty big gain. I think that I like to hear a little bit of that rosin on the bow, that kind of shushy zhuzhy sound personally. Those are personal preferences. So there you go. What else have we got to talk about here? Let's... futzing around with some of the other features, especially the scales, just to hear the real recorded bow transitions. Those are obviously pretty fast. Let's hear them slower. All right, so clearly you can turn auto off and get them to be artifacty when you stretch them too far. That's typical. That's why you wouldn't necessarily want to... Well, it's a different feature entirely. I just wanted to hear different... Well, I'm not sure if we've learned what we wanted to learn. So put your feedback in the comments area of the video, or just obviously be on VI control if you want to. I'm willing to make probably one more of these. One trick, this volume range amount, I turned it down so that the volume wouldn't be jumping to super loud and down to super quiet. You can adjust, there's so many controls. You can adjust the volume range, and if you take it down to 0, you can hear the transitions between the velocity layers much more clearly. Let's do that. You wouldn't actually want to do this. This is more of a testing experiment than compositional. You know, you wouldn't want to do this in a piece. So that's supposed to be sounding audibly. The loudness should be quieter. And there was the crossfade into the next dynamic layer. And there's the crossfade into the next. And that's the crossfade into the next. But they're all the same loudness to our ears because I've reduced the volume range to nothing. So that's why I'm hearing 4 different dynamic layers recorded. So did not apply the PIXELPOET trick, the trick that we learned with the wrench tool where you select the groups to the ports or the glisses. So those were just with transition speeds all the way down and not the sample start shift. Kind of just playing those for contrast. Sometimes I hear more of that overlap, as though you hear two recordings playing together. Sometimes not. Sometimes it sounds much more seamed together. AudioBro has been paying close attention to all of this, and they've been a very, very responsive sample developer and participating in the conversation, and say that there are improvements coming to the default package. So if you were to buy it, you're in for some improvements coming from the developer, so that these sorts of user experiments aren't necessary. This is more of a specialized group. I wouldn't take what I'm doing here as necessarily a comment on the library as a whole. This is one isolated feature, the Legato Transitions, that people were asking about, talking about, so I wanted to try some of it out. But also, this video I specifically wanted to try to voice what I was hearing as well, since the conversation has gone on so long. I have other things planned. I've been working on things with the Art tool, the Auto Rhythm tool. I played a couple of the runs and scales here. There's a lot to explore in this package. And so I hope you all have a great day, have a great week, stay safe, have fun. Cheers.